After 4 weeks of season play, 16 teams are still fighting their way to make it to San Francisco to take home a piece of that $171,000 prize pool. Welcome to Talking Tanks. I'm Joshua Gray.
And I'm Randall Holcomb. We'll start the show by going over the standings, where each of these 16 teams sit, with 4 at the top, and of course that massive group in the middle who's fighting over each other for placement in the top 8.
The fighting continues. But the number 1 team right now in the standings, Simp, is looking very, very pristine. And the leader of Simp, Marcus Gomez, known as Mac G, is going to be joining us in the studio live for an exclusive interview.
And after that, Oliver Maxfield from the WGLU will be joining us to talk about his opinions on the 7x54 format and, of course, the Global Grand Finals coming up.
It's always great to hear from Oliver, and maybe we can try to find some of these teams from either North America or Europe to face off against some of these Russian teams that have been powerhouses ever since season 1. Well, that's not our only guest as well. We have Ute joining us from the San Francisco office, the commissioner of Wargaming here in North America.
He's got plenty to say, I'm sure.
He always has plenty to say. We have a number of questions that you submitted this week that he's going to answer. This is Talking Tanks. Let's get started. Welcome to Talking Tanks, ladies and gentlemen. We're excited to be talking about all of these teams here, where they sit in the standings overall, and looking a little bit deeper into their characterizations and their play style overall, and if they can make it to the finals.
Yeah, I mean, the way this new season, the new format has affected everything is astounding, in the fact that it has set everyone completely on their heads. No one really knew how to approach this new format, but they're all figuring it out. Slowly but surely. Slowly
but surely. The first time that we're having 7x54, which has changed everything in the sense of timings, strategies, tank lineups, and it's been a great change all around. All the teams have been behind it, and now we're starting to see some of those metas form right now in 7x54.
Yeah, and some teams just stepping way up and leading the pack to show us exactly how it's supposed to be played.
And as we continue to see separation with these teams, we'll start to see the outliers, the ones that are at the very top going to the finals. And then we'll see some of the playoff-type teams that are in the middle of the mix right now that have a really good shot at making it to San Francisco. Ones that are barely going to squeak by, at least through the playoffs and the wild cards. And then after that, the ones that are still fighting their way through from the bottom. We want to hear from you. We always love hearing from our audience, so make sure to send us a tweet on Twitter at WGLNA or on Facebook, facebook.com/WGLNA. Use that hashtag on Twitter so we can find your tweets and put them up on the broadcast.
And today's question is not actually for you, but for Ute, the commissioner of the Gold League. We're hoping you guys can sense something interesting. We might throw it in his interview later tonight.
Well, overall, you take a look at how these teams are performing week by week by week, and it compartmentalizes a bit the VIPs, the well-played kind of scenarios, like the must-watch highlights every night, and the MVPs of some of these players.
Commander J
being one of them, as always. But then we start to see patterns with some of these teams. But honestly, Randall, after 4 weeks of play, the patterns are still up in the air for teams like Roulette and Top Tier. We're seeing one night they're looking fantastic, and another night they're losing to a team first time in the Gold League.
Yeah, there's a little consistency issues, and that seems to be the major theme of a lot of these teams that we had high expectations for, but aren't necessarily performing as well as we would like.
As we continue to see this separation, things can still change. There's plenty of opportunities for teams that are towards the bottom of the barrel, you could say, to really come out on top, at least through the playoffs, but it's going to have to be almost miraculous type of play with some of these teams, almost undefeated type play. after week 4. Let's go ahead and take a look at the standings and see who is at the top along with Simp. Simp #1 team right now, currently undefeated with 21 league points, followed by the Cunninghams right behind him, who recently had a surprising loss against I Love Lamp, a tiebreaker loss. RBIS in third right now. They finished third place in the season finals from Season 4. They're looking very strong this season.
Yes, and then Hammer Time right at fourth place with 14 points separates that top 4. There's just 2 points separating them from that main group that's going to be falling over each other trying to get into the top 8, led by Simple Tankers and Simply Irresistible at 12. Then 1 point behind them, Fun Gaming and Full Potato with 11 points. Now the group continues down to top tier Roulette at 10, and then I Love Lamp and Elevate at 9. Not much separating those guys from each other, just a few tiebreaker wins and losses is the difference there. Now, just below that, you do have Noble Victoria's Secret. It's tied 6 and 6.
And that tie is going to break up, obviously, in week 5. But these teams at the bottom are starting to kind of climb over each other's corpses after the battles are won to get higher on those standings.
I mean, you said this one before. They got to get angry.
Yeah.
They can't care about someone else.
Yeah, they got to get angry. They've got to get angry, and they've got to get coordinated and have this cohesive push as a team. Fighting for finals is the first topic for the first 2 teams we're going to take a look at here. Now, what this means is that the top 2 performers at the end of regular season play are automatically seeded into the finals. So they do not have to play through the playoffs. That is a bit of a burden they don't have to shoulder when you look at what's at stake here, the $171,000 prize pool. But a guaranteed seed doesn't mean a guaranteed victory in the end. However, being able to bypass the playoffs is a boon for these 2 teams.
Yeah, it certainly will be useful. Those 2 teams are Simp and I believe Cunningham's right now. That could be changing soon. Depends on what happens. It could be out there in the wind. But right now, Simp is dominant, and they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, Simp has been looking fantastic. Currently undefeated against top tier, Noble, Victoria's Secret, Penguin Mafia, Hammer Time, and RBIS. To quote Laps, as we quoted earlier on, Simp carefully plots their wins. They've plotted themselves into the finals in every season. And the biggest obstacle they've had to overcome is time management, and they're doing so.
Yeah, it seemed like at the beginning of the season, sometimes they would have the opportunity to win, but they would have jumped at their chance maybe 30 seconds late, maybe a minute late, where they would have inevitably won, just the timer was against them. And that seems to be the only problem, because individually, as players, all excellent. Strategy, reaction time, ability to control the battle, excellent. Top of the entire league right now.
But at the top of the league, who can challenge them? This is the biggest question, because we have a bit of a hole, a bit of a void in our season with the loss of Fnatic.
Yeah, and the only team to really challenge them was Noble, and that was a 5-3.
Yeah, so I mean, a couple teams have been taking some battles off them, but still Simp leading the charge when it comes to standings, undefeated. Taking a look at the Cunninghams now, with the separation between the Cunninghams and Simp are 2 battles, both tiebreakers. One was a tiebreaker win over Hammer Time, the other a tiebreaker loss against I Love Lamp. But you see here on your screen, Commander J looking dominant as always.
Yeah, in numerous battles, he has been the player to look for, as he has just been in the crucial place and been able to keep his cool against odds that you would not expect him to come out on top.
Taking down 5 tanks in one battle, I think at least 4 tanks in one battle, 100% accuracy. It was a 5 tanks.
It was a 5 tank, 100% accuracy.
2,500 damage, still one of the top performers in the league in general. But there's a lot of superstars that have been prevalent in previous seasons and now have been added onto some of these teams, like Soviet, superstar from the former Fnatic, now a member of Roulette, and trying to get that cohesion together with those teams. It's not just one person, you know, that wins these games. It takes a team, obviously. Now, talking about the playoffs, how the playoffs work with the 3rd through 10th team at the end of regular play. We'll play through another bracket. At the end, it's the 2 remaining teams in the playoffs that'll be joining us in San Francisco.
Yeah, and those teams make up the prepping for playoffs. That's that group that's probably going to be, right now, that right beyond fourth place through about, what was it, about 12th, that keep fighting over each other. And I expect that all to change quite a bit. It's unpredictable, but there are a few teams to pay attention to.
And those teams are heading towards the top right now, as we'll dive into 2 of them. But you have to look at the expectations coming from us, the commentators, and also from the audience. And are these teams meeting our expectations at the beginning of the season or not? And some of these teams are not meeting expectations compared to the performance from last season.
It's consistency. That's really what it is. It's about being consistent. Some days those teams show up. they're good to go and they look on top of their game. But then there are days where you look at that same team and you're wondering what happened.
Simply Irresistible is one of the teams that has blown us away, at least when it comes to expectations and how well they've been performing, even up against these veteran teams. This is the first time Simply Irresistible has been competing in the Gold League, and currently they timed out and Fun Gaming with tiebreaker wins as well against I Love Lamp and Full Potato. Their losses, tiebreaker-wise, were Roulette and Hammer Time. Their only full loss has been the Cunninghams.
Yeah, that was a 5-3 match.
Yeah.
Still a good game for them. Simply Irresistible certainly is that team that has joined the league and surprised us by performing so much better than we expected.
And it's the doom of the tiebreaker points for this team as well. If they had gotten full wins instead of tiebreaker wins, they'd be in 4th place. If they had full losses instead of tiebreaker losses, they'd be in 9th place. Currently tied for 5th place. They're in a good spot, but hopefully these tiebreaker wins won't bite them in the end, towards the end of the standings when it comes to the end of the season. Moving on and talking about Fun Gaming, another team that is continuing to impress as they're trying to shed that moniker of being known as the camping team.
And I think they're doing it exceptionally well. Their attacks are getting better and better. Their defenses, solid. But again, it's a team with consistency issues. Some days they show up and it's great. I love the way they're playing. Their tactics are on par, and they seem to get the maps that they're better at. But they are also pulling out these cheeky attacks. Look at Simple Tankers versus Fun Gaming when they pulled a cap fast against the team that I would expect to pull a cap fast the most.
And that type of expectation is what is changing here, and the 7x54 format helps with those changes along with these new tanks and different tactics. But Fun Gaming's changes also is involved with their stress level and anxiety. That was one of the biggest changes when it came to their tiebreaker win against Simple Tankers. They were down 1-4. And with that type of, well, let's just try whatever we can, and they came back and then got a tiebreaker win because of it.
Yeah, that was astounding how they were able to accomplish something like that. One of those instances where I'm saying Fun Gaming has the potential. They have the real potential to go far this season.
Let's talk about the teams that are working for the wild card right now. Now, the wild card system, part of the playoffs, the teams kind of towards the bottom that are fit right into the bottom of that bracket when it comes to the playoffs. And those are the teams that are barely going to make it through, maybe not have the best seeds when it comes to the playoffs. So they definitely want to get away from the bottom because that's relegation, the next topic we're going to dive into. I'm a little bit surprised that we have these two teams under this category, Randall.
Yeah, we're talking about Top Tier and Roulette, two teams which had high expectations. Roulette, the team which is known for winning our previous season, Season 4, and then Top Tier, someone who had in Season 4 impressed us and shown that they were gradually improving, that their tactics, while, I mean, a little off color, weren't necessarily bad. So they were doing okay, and they looked to be getting better. Both teams were. But now they're sitting so much lower in the standings than we could have expected.
Well, let's dive a little bit deeper into Top Tier, a team that has a win against RBIS, I Love Lamp, and Noble. Tiebreaker losses against Roulette, a loss against Simp, Fun Gaming, and Cunningham's. Rude Awakening was quoted from his face-off, "It's not how you start, but how you finish." That's very true, Rude Awakening, but now that start period is over. We're halfway through the season. It's time to perform, or else you're not going to finish well.
Yeah, they can't afford many more losses. Maybe one. Maybe that's it, or some tiebreakers, but they need to start winning. And as you look at it, they're going to be fighting against Hammer Time on January 27th, a team currently in 4th place. If they can overcome Hammer Time, that, I think, is what sets them in that 1 through 10 area where they're going to have a chance at our finals.
That's the biggest gauntlet for them. The biggest challenge is how will they fare against Hammer Time. We'll start to see a bit of those kind of linchpin, very big battles, not necessarily game-breaking for the team itself, but to really measure how well they're doing based on the competition.
Yeah,
and some of these guys have had a little bit of an easier journey at the beginning against non-veteran teams, but obviously every match really counts for Top Tier right now.
Yeah, of course. And now, of course, there's Roulette also down there, who is the team who was our last season's champions. But they're surprising in their inconsistency. It seems that is their biggest problem, consistency. And it's notable, where some days they'll show up, and it's beautiful. Absolutely astounding tanks. Far from what we expect from most teams. And then there are days where you watch and Roulette's not on their game. Something is different. Something isn't clicking. And that's what happens with a new team.
Yes, you have new members that are understanding the communication principles and the communication kind of just way of life in the moment when you're a part of that team that's that can be completely different compared to what you were used to. Soviet may communicate differently with his new teammates on Roulette compared to how they communicated with Fnatic. And that is a process. It's not an event. And for both a team like Fun Gaming trying to change their ways overall with their outlook at the first 2-3 minutes of a battle to the communication on Roulette, a lot of these teams are going through that process, more refinement, which makes them even better for the next season if they can't make it to the finals this season.
Yeah, we'll see if they're going to be able to do that one. Now, the final group is the ready for relegation. These are the guys who have an incredibly thin chance of making it to our playoffs, but they're not quite out of it yet.
Yeah, the relegation system works for the Silver League teams that have been fighting through the Silver League but didn't make it to first or second. However, that third or fourth position and allows for an opening, you could say, for some of these teams to still fight to stay in the Gold League, where these Silver teams want to make it into the Gold League by defeating them. So a lot is going to be on the line for these teams. Simple Tinkers was a team that unfortunately was out of the Gold League based on their performance, but joined us again via the qualifiers. So hopefully these two teams won't have that same outcome, but anything can happen. Still plenty of weeks left for both of them. The first team we're going to talk about is going to be Noble.
Oh, and Noble was a team that looked so strong out of the beginning of this. They played exceptionally well against Roulette and Fun Gaming at the beginning of the season, but they've lost that momentum they had. And where did it go?
This downward spiral is not a happy outcome for anybody involved, honestly, for Noble, but it's their energy, which is something one of their team representatives commented on, is that when they're well prepared and they have the perfect energy to start the day, they're making moves, they're making differences, not necessarily getting straight on victories, but they're having great fights. They're learning from their mistakes. They're analyzing what went wrong, and as a team improving. When their energy is off at the beginning of the match or prepping for the match, they don't have a very good match. I think a lot of it's based on attitude and commitment in the first, the hour leading into the match for this team.
Yeah, and I remember their performance against Simp. Now I'm looking for their performance against the Cunninghams coming up on the 22nd.
Well, the thing about it, though, with Zombie Food is that they still want to try to have fun all the time, and that helps with an attitude, especially for the team that's low in the standings. Penguin Mafia is the other team that we're going to focus on. They have only one win against Timed Out. Losses against Cunningham's, I Love Lamp, Full Potato, Simp, RBIS, Simple Tankers, leaving them in 15th place right now.
But Simple Tankers was a solid match. That was a tiebreaker, 4-5, showing us that Penguin Mafia has the potential to play well. And they have the ability to take a match to a team which is ranked high in our season thus far. They just, again, consistency. But Scrublet and Canadian Cracker are putting up solid numbers. They're performing just as well as some of the best players in the league, statistically, showing me that they have the players. They just need to get that cohesion together.
And this is a first-time competition for Penguin Mafia in the Gold League, making their debut up against these veteran teams. It's the only way they know how they're going to perform is to fight these teams. None of this is easy. None of this is simple. And for some of these newer teams, they're finding out the hard way. Well, that does it for our standings, folks. We're going to have a very exclusive and special interview with Mac G, the leader of Simp, after this. Stay tuned.